1888, Oklahoma Territory. Grace stepped down from the stagecoach with trembling hands, clutching the crumpled letter that had changed her life. The ranch stretched before her under the autumn sky, more beautiful than she had imagined. This was supposed to be her new beginning, her escape from the scandal back east. Nathan Chambers had written such kind letters, promising a home, a partnership, a fresh start. She smoothed her burgundy traveling dress and lifted her chin. Whatever happened next, she would not go back to Boston in shame. The ranch house sat solid against the prairie, smoke curling from its chimney. Grace picked up her carpet bag and walked toward the porch, her heart hammering. She had traveled 2 weeks for this moment. The door opened before she could knock, and a man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark brown hair and the bluest eyes she had ever seen. Handsome in a rugged way that made her breath catch. This was Nathan. But his expression was all wrong. No welcoming smile, no recognition. Just pure confusion. "Can I help you, miss?" His voice was deep, cautious. Grace's stomach dropped. "I'm Grace Sterling. Your bride. I came as soon as I got your letter." Nathan stared at her like she had spoken a foreign language. "My what?" "Your mail-order bride." The words felt suddenly foolish on her tongue. "You wrote to me 3 months ago. You said you needed a wife, someone to help run the ranch, someone who wanted a new life in the territory." She fumbled in her bag for the letters, hands shaking now. "Here, you wrote these." He took the papers, his frown deepening as he read. Grace watched his face, dread pooling in her belly. Something was very wrong. "Miss Sterling," he said slowly, looking up at her with something like pity. "I never wrote these letters. I never placed an advertisement for a bride. I don't know who did this, but it wasn't me." The world tilted. Grace gripped the porch railing, her vision swimming. "That's not possible. You wrote about the ranch, about Oklahoma Territory, about wanting a partner who wasn't afraid of hard work. Someone knew enough about me to make it convincing." Nathan's jaw tightened. "But I swear to you, I never sent for a bride. I'm sorry you came all this way for nothing." Nothing. 2 weeks of travel, her last savings spent on the fare. Her reputation in Boston destroyed by whispers she could not silence. And now, this. Grace felt the familiar burn of tears, but refused to let them fall. She had cried enough over the past months. She would not cry in front of this stranger. "I see." Her voice came out steady somehow. "Then I apologize for the intrusion, Mr. Chambers. If you could direct me to the nearest town, I'll make arrangements. Nearest town is 15 miles west. Stagecoach won't come through again until next week." He studied her with those intense blue eyes. "You have somewhere to go? Family?" "No." The admission cost her pride, but lying would not help. "I have no one. That's why I answered your advertisement." Or whoever's advertisement it was. Nathan rubbed his jaw, clearly wrestling with something. The sun was sinking toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Grace tried not to think about where she would sleep tonight, or tomorrow, or next week. "Look," he said finally, "I can't just leave you stranded. You can stay in the spare room tonight, and we'll figure out what to do in the morning. It's not safe for a woman alone out here after dark." I don't need your charity, Mr. Chambers. It's not charity. It's common decency. His tone softened slightly. Whoever played this trick on both of us, they left you in a bad situation. I'm not going to make it worse by turning you out with nowhere to go. Grace wanted to refuse, to hold on to what little dignity she had left. But the prairie stretched vast and empty around them, and night was coming fast. She had no money for a hotel, even if there was one nearby. No prospects. No plan. Nothing but the clothes in her carpet bag, and the shattered pieces of hope she had carried all the way from Boston. One night, she said quietly, "Thank you." Nathan nodded and picked up her bag like it weighed nothing. "Come on inside. I'll make coffee, and we can try to figure out who would do something like this." The ranch house was simple, but well kept. Grace noticed the details as Nathan led her inside. Sturdy furniture, built by skilled hands, clean floors, a kitchen that smelled of coffee and wood smoke. A bachelor's home, but one cared for with pride. He showed her to a small bedroom off the main room. Plainly furnished, but clean. "I'll give you a few minutes to settle in," he said. "Coffee will be ready when you are." Grace set down her bag and sank onto the narrow bed, finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of the disaster. She had been so sure, so hopeful. The letters had been kind, thoughtful, painting a picture of a lonely rancher who wanted a true partner, not just a housekeeper. They had resonated with her own loneliness, her own desperate need to escape Boston, and the ruin her former employer had brought down on her when he tried to force himself on her, and she fought back. Society had taken his side, as society always did. The letters from Nathan Chambers had seemed like salvation. Except they were not from Nathan Chambers at all. She splashed water on her face from the basin, straightened her dress, and went to face whatever came next. Nathan had coffee poured and was sitting at the kitchen table with the letters spread before him. Grace took the seat across from him, wrapping her hands around the warm cup he offered. "These are well written," he said, tapping one of the pages. "Whoever wrote them knew details about this ranch, about the cattle operation, even about the Cheyenne tribe that trades with me sometimes. This wasn't some random con." "Then who?" Grace met his eyes. "Who would benefit from bringing me here under false pretenses?" "I've been thinking about that." Nathan's expression darkened. "There's a man named Victor Kincaid. He's been trying to buy this ranch for months. I keep refusing. He's made threats, subtle ones, about what might happen if I don't sell." "You think he did this? But why? To make me look bad, maybe. Or to cause trouble for me in town. A woman showing up claiming to be my bride when I never sent for one, it could damage my reputation, make people question my word." He shook his head. "Or maybe he thought you'd be a distraction, something to occupy my attention while he makes his next move." Grace felt cold despite the warmth of the coffee. "What kind of man is he?" "Dangerous. Smart. He owns half the businesses in town, has the sheriff in his pocket. If he wants this land, he won't stop until he gets it." Nathan looked at her with something like regret. "I'm sorry you got pulled into this, Miss Sterling. Kincaid doesn't care who he hurts. Neither did the man who tried to ruin me in Boston." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Nathan's eyebrows rose, but he did not pry. Grace appreciated that. "I came here to escape one powerful man who thought he could do whatever he wanted. I won't let another one control my fate. You're safe here tonight, Nathan said firmly. Kincaid won't make a move with you in the house. It would look too suspicious. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, we figure out our next steps. He gathered the letters. For now, you should rest. It's been a long day. Grace wanted to argue, to prove she was not some fragile woman who needed protecting. But exhaustion pulled at her bones, and the bed in the spare room suddenly seemed like the most appealing thing in the world. She stood, nodding her thanks. Miss Sterling, Nathan said as she turned to go. For what it's worth, I'm sorry this happened to you. You seem like a decent woman. You didn't deserve to be played like this. Something in his voice, genuine and kind, made Grace's throat tighten. Thank you, Mr. Chambers. You're a better man than whoever wrote those letters pretending to be you. That night, lying in the narrow bed in a stranger's house in the middle of Oklahoma Territory, Grace stared at the ceiling and wondered what she would do. She had no money to get back east, even if she wanted to return to the Whispers in Judgment. No skills that would help her find work in a frontier town. No family. No friends. Nothing. Except maybe, just maybe, a rancher who seemed honest despite the deception that had brought her here. The next morning, Grace woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon. She dressed quickly, pinning her hair back with efficient fingers, and emerged to find Nathan cooking breakfast at the wood stove. Morning, he said, not turning around. Hope you like bacon and eggs. It's about all I know how to make. It smells wonderful. Grace hesitated. Can I help? You're a guest. Sit. But Grace could not sit while someone waited on her. She moved to the counter and started slicing bread from the loaf she found there. Nathan glanced at her, then nodded as if approving her refusal to be idle. They worked in comfortable silence, and Grace felt something ease in her chest. This was familiar, domestic work that grounded her. They ate at the table, and Grace found herself studying Nathan when he was not looking. He was younger than she had imagined from the letters, probably only a few years older than her own 26 years. His hands were calloused from work, and she noticed a scar along his left forearm. A man who worked his own land, who understood hardship. There was something solid about him, dependable. I've been thinking, Nathan said, setting down his fork, about your situation. Grace's stomach tightened. Here it came, the polite dismissal. The way I see it, you have a few options. I can give you money for the stagecoach fare back east, though you said you have nothing to return to. Or I can take you into town, help you find work there, though jobs are scarce for women right now. Or? Grace heard the unspoken word hanging in the air. Nathan met her eyes. Or you could stay here, not as my bride, obviously. But I do need help around the ranch. Someone to handle the house, do the cooking and mending, help with the chickens in the garden. I could pay you fair wages, room and board. It would give you time to figure out what you want to do next, and give me some help I actually need. Grace's heart stuttered. You're offering me a job? A temporary one, at least, until you get on your feet. He looked uncomfortable, like he was not used to making such offers. It would be proper. Separate rooms, no expectations beyond the work. I know I'm a stranger, and you have no reason to trust me. But the offer is genuine. She should refuse. Staying here, working for a man she did not know, in the middle of nowhere with a dangerous man like Kincaid circling. It was reckless at best, foolish at worst. But the alternative was returning to Boston in disgrace, or trying to survive in a frontier town with no money and no prospects. At least here she would have work, wages, time to plan. And Nathan Chambers, for all that he was a stranger, had shown her more kindness in one night than anyone in Boston had shown her in months. "I accept," Grace said. "On one condition. Name it. We find out who really sent those letters. I don't like being used as a pawn in someone else's game, and neither should you." A slow smile crossed Nathan's face, transforming his serious features into something warmer. "Deal, Miss Sterling. I think we're going to get along just fine." Grace felt a flutter of something in her chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. She crushed it firmly. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. She could not afford to let her guard down, not after everything that had happened in Boston. Nathan Chambers might seem honest, but she had been fooled before. Still, as they cleaned up breakfast together, and he explained the daily routines of the ranch, Grace could not quite shake the feeling that her life had just changed direction in a way she could not yet understand. The days fell into a rhythm that surprised Grace with its ease. She woke early, made coffee and breakfast, tended the chickens, worked in the garden. Nathan handled the cattle and horses, mended fences, did the heavy labor that kept a ranch running. They crossed paths throughout the day, exchanging brief words, settling into a comfortable partnership that felt nothing like the awkward arrangement it had started as. Grace found herself watching him when she thought he was not looking. The way he moved with quiet competence, never wasting motion. The patience he showed with the animals, even when they tested him. The consideration he gave her, asking her opinion on small decisions, treating her like an equal partner rather than hired help. It had been 3 days since her arrival when Nathan came in from checking the fence line with a grim expression. "What's wrong?" Grace asked, setting down the shirt she was mending. "Someone cut the wire on the north fence. Cattle got out. Took me all morning to round them up." He pulled off his hat, running a hand through his hair. This wasn't an accident. Kincaid. Most likely. Nathan's jaw tightened. "He's escalating. First the letters to bring you here, now damaging my property. He wants me to know he can hurt me whenever he wants." Grace felt anger kindle in her chest. "What will you do?" "Keep fixing what he breaks. Protect what's mine." He looked at her with something fierce in his eyes. "Including you, if he comes after you to get to me. I can take care of myself, Mr. Chambers." "Nathan," he corrected. "If we're going to be facing down a man like Kincaid, I think we can use first names, don't you?" "Grace," she said softly. Saying it felt like crossing some invisible line, shifting their relationship from formal employer and employee to something more personal. Something that made her pulse quicken. Nathan held her gaze for a long moment, and Grace wondered if he felt it too. This pull between them that had nothing to do with false letters or business arrangements. "Grace," he repeated, like he was testing how it sounded. Then he smiled, and it transformed his whole face. "I like that. Suits you." That night, Grace lay in bed and admitted to herself what she had been denying. She was attracted to Nathan Chambers. More than attracted. In just a few days, he had shown her what a good man looked like, how partnership should feel, what it meant to be respected rather than used. He made her laugh with dry observations about the chickens. He listened when she talked about her ideas for improving the garden. He never touched her without reason. But when he did, steadying her elbow or handing her a bucket, the contact sent electricity through her skin. She could not afford these feelings. This was temporary, a way station while she figured out her future. Letting herself care about Nathan would only lead to more heartbreak, and she had survived enough of that already. But her heart, it seemed, was not listening to reason. The next morning, Grace was hanging laundry when she heard a horse approaching. She turned to see a stranger riding up to the house, well-dressed in a way that marked him as wealthy. Instinct prickled warning along her spine. Nathan emerged from the barn, his posture going tense as he recognized the visitor. "Kincaid," he said flatly. So this was the man behind the letters, the threats, the cut fence. Grace studied him as he dismounted. Mid-40s, with silver threading through his dark hair, handsome in a polished way that felt calculated. His smile was charming, but his eyes were cold. "Chambers," Kincaid said pleasantly. "I heard you had a visitor. Thought I should come introduce myself." His gaze slid to Grace, assessing her like livestock. "Miss Sterling, I presume? I'm Victor Kincaid. Welcome to Oklahoma Territory." Grace's skin crawled at the way he looked at her, but she kept her expression neutral. "Mr. Kincaid, I must say, I was surprised to hear Nathan had finally sent for a bride. He's been alone out here for so long." Kincaid's tone was friendly, but there was mockery underneath. "Though I suppose even stubborn men get lonely eventually." "Miss Sterling is not my bride," Nathan said, his voice hard. "She's my employee. And you're not welcome here, Kincaid. State your business or leave." "Such hostility, Nathan. I'm just being neighborly." Kincaid's smile never wavered. "I wanted to make sure Miss Sterling understands the situation out here. This ranch has been targeted by claim jumpers recently. Dangerous men. It would be a shame if something happened to her because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time." End quote. The threat was barely veiled. Grace felt fury burn through her fear. This man thought he could intimidate her, use her as leverage against Nathan. He was wrong. "I appreciate your concern, Mr. Kincaid," she said, her voice sweet as honey and twice as cutting. "But I'm quite capable of assessing danger for myself. And right now, the only danger I see is a man making threats on another man's property. I suggest you leave before Mr. Chambers loses his patience." Kincaid's eyes narrowed, the charming mask slipping for just a moment to reveal the calculation beneath. "Spirited, I can see why Nathan hired you. But spirit doesn't stop bullets, Miss Sterling. Remember that." He remounted and rode away, but his parting words hung in the air like smoke. Nathan was at Grace's side immediately. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." But her hands were shaking. She balled them into fists, refusing to show weakness. "He's the one who sent those letters, isn't he?" "Almost certainly." Nathan's expression was grim. "And now he's seen you, confirmed you're here. He'll use that against me somehow. Then we need to be smarter than him." Grace turned to face Nathan fully. "You said you wanted to find out who sent the letters. I think it's time we took the fight to Kincaid, instead of waiting for him to make the next move." Nathan looked at her with something like admiration. "You're braver than you look, Grace Sterling." "I'm angry, Nathan Chambers, and I don't run anymore." She met his eyes. Not from men like him. Something shifted between them in that moment, a understanding passing wordlessly. They were in this together now. Partners, against a common threat. And as Nathan reached out to gently touch her shoulder, a gesture of solidarity and comfort, Grace felt her carefully constructed walls begin to crack. She was in trouble. Not from Kincaid, though he was certainly dangerous, but from the way her heart sped up when Nathan was near, from the way she caught herself watching for him throughout the day, from the way his rare smiles made warmth bloom in her chest. She was falling for Nathan Chambers, and she had no idea what to do about it. That evening, they sat on the porch, as had become their habit. Nathan carved a piece of wood, while Grace mended a tear in one of his shirts. The autumn air was cool, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink. It should have been peaceful. But Grace's mind churned with worry about Kincaid's visit. "Tell me about Boston," Nathan said suddenly. "What made you answer those letters?" Grace's hand stilled on the mending. She had known this conversation would come eventually, but it still made her chest tight. "I worked as a bookkeeper for a shipping company. I was good at my job, better than most of the men there. My employer, Mr. Harrison, he noticed, but not in the way I hoped." Nathan stopped carving, his full attention on her. "He cornered me in the office one night after everyone else had left. Said if I wanted to keep my position, I should be more grateful for his attention." Grace forced the words out past the old shame. "I fought him off, scratched his face badly. He told everyone I threw myself at him, and when he refused me, I attacked him out of spite." Who do you think society believed? The wealthy, respected businessman, or the spinster bookkeeper with no family? Grace. Nathan's voice was rough with emotion. "I'm sorry that happened to you. I lost my position, my reputation, my boarding room. No one would hire me after that. The letters from you, or whoever pretended to be you, they seemed like providence. A chance to start over somewhere. No one knew my story." She met his eyes. "And then I got here, and it was all another lie." "Not all of it." Nathan set down his carving. "You did get a chance to start over. And the man you met here, he's not lying to you. Everything I've shown you is real." "Is it?" Grace heard the vulnerability in her own voice. "How do I know this isn't another trap? How do I know you won't turn out to be just another man who wants something from me?" Nathan stood and walked to the porch railing, his back to her. Grace thought she had pushed too far, revealed too much of her damaged heart. But when he turned back, his expression was open, almost raw. "My wife died 2 years ago," he said quietly. "Fever took her in the space of a week. We'd been married 5 years, known each other since childhood. I thought I'd never want anyone else in my life, never want to risk that kind of loss again." He paused, his blue eyes intense. "And then you showed up on my porch, brave and angry and refusing to be beaten down by life. You make me laugh, Grace. You make me want to talk about my day, to hear your thoughts, to sit on this porch every evening and just be near you." Grace's heart hammered against her ribs. "Nathan, I know it's too soon. I know you have every reason not to trust me or any man. But I need you to know that what I feel, it's real. You're not alone in this, whatever this is." Grace stood on shaking legs and crossed to him. She saw the tension in his shoulders, the vulnerability in his eyes. This strong, capable man was offering her his heart, and she could accept it or crush it. She thought of Harrison and his forcing hands, of the letters that had lied, of all the ways men had hurt her. But Nathan was not Harrison. He had never once made her feel unsafe or used. He had given her work, respect, partnership. He had shown her kindness when he could have turned her away. And when he looked at her, she saw not calculation or desire for conquest, but genuine care. "I'm afraid," she whispered. "I'm afraid to trust this." "I know." He raised a hand slowly, giving her time to move away. When she did not, he cupped her cheek with gentle fingers. "I'm afraid too, but maybe we can be afraid together." Grace leaned into his touch, letting herself feel the warmth of his palm against her skin. When he lowered his head slowly, asking permission, she answered by rising onto her toes to meet him halfway. The kiss was soft, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. Grace felt something inside her crack, wide open, the walls she had built crumbling under the gentleness of his touch. Nathan kissed her like she was precious, like she mattered, like he had been waiting for this moment as much as she had. When they parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he murmured. "Not as an employee. Stay because you want to be here, with me." Grace should have been terrified. She had known this man for less than a week. But her heart, her battered, cautious heart, knew the truth. "I want to stay." They stood on the porch, wrapped in each other's arms, as the sun sank below the horizon. And Grace felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Hope for the future. But hope, she would learn, was a fragile thing. And Kincaid was not done with them yet. The next morning, Nathan found 2 of his cattle dead in the north pasture, poisoned. The day after that, someone set fire to his hay barn, though they managed to put it out before it spread. Grace watched Nathan's jaw tighten with each new attack, saw the exhaustion settling into his features. Kincaid was systematically destroying everything Nathan had built, and they both knew why. "He wants you to sell," Grace said as they surveyed the burned barn. "He thinks if he makes life hard enough, you'll give up." "He's wrong." Nathan's voice was hard as iron. "This ranch is mine. My father built it. My wife loved it. And I'll be damned if I let some land-grabbing bastard take it from me." But even iron could be worn down given enough pressure. Grace saw it in the lines around Nathan's eyes, the heavy set of his shoulders. He was one man against an enemy with resources and no conscience. That night, Grace made a decision. She waited until Nathan was asleep, then dressed in her dark traveling dress and slipped out of the house. She saddled Nathan's gentlest horse, whispering apologies to the animal, and rode toward town under the cover of darkness. Kincaid's house was easy to find, the largest and most ostentatious in town. Grace tied the horse a block away and approached on foot, her heart hammering. This was reckless, possibly suicidal. But she could not stand by and watch Nathan lose everything while she did nothing. She found a window with light still showing and peered through. Kincaid sat at a desk covered with papers, a glass of whiskey at his elbow. He was alone. Grace tried the window. Locked, but the catch was old. She worked at it with a hairpin, thanking her brother for teaching her this trick when they were children. The latch gave, and she eased the window up and climbed through. Kincaid looked up, startled. Then his expression shifted to amusement. "Miss Sterling, how unexpected. Breaking and entering is a serious crime. So is fraud, property damage, and attempted murder." Grace kept her voice steady despite her racing pulse. I want to know why. Why Nathan's ranch? What makes it worth all this? Kincaid leaned back in his chair, studying her. You're either very brave or very stupid, coming here alone. Sit down, Miss Sterling. Let's talk like civilized people. Grace wanted to refuse, but she had come here for information. She perched on the edge of the chair across from his desk, ready to bolt if needed. Nathan's ranch sits on the best water source in the county, Kincaid said, swirling his whiskey. The Cheyenne tribe uses that water when they come through in summer. I want to cut them off, force them to negotiate through me for access. Control the water, control the tribe's movements, eventually push them off their treaty lands entirely. Once they're gone, I can expand into their territory. Grace felt sick. You want to destroy an entire people for profit. I want to capitalize on opportunity. Kincaid's tone was matter of fact, like he was discussing the weather. The tribe is a nuisance. Nathan is stubborn. And you're a complication I had not anticipated. Those letters were supposed to embarrass him, make him look foolish in front of the town. Instead, you actually stayed. And now he has someone fighting beside him. Inconvenient. So you admit you sent the letters. I admit nothing that could be used against me in court. Kincaid smiled. But between us, yes. I saw an advertisement in a Boston newspaper from a woman seeking work out west. I researched you, Miss Sterling. Found out about your scandal, your desperate situation. You were perfect, so I wrote letters as Nathan, promising salvation. I knew you'd come. Grace wanted to claw the smile off his face. You manipulated me, used my trauma, my fear, my desperation. I gave you exactly what you wanted, a new life in Oklahoma Territory, away from Boston and its judgment. You should be thanking me. You're a monster. Kincaid's expression hardened. I'm a businessman. And now that we've had this lovely chat, what exactly did you hope to accomplish by breaking into my home? I wanted the truth, and I wanted to warn you. Grace stood, proud of how steady her voice remained. Nathan and I know what you're doing. We're not giving up. And if anything happens to either of us, we've written down everything we know and left it with someone who will take it to the territorial marshal. You'll be investigated, charged, possibly hanged. It was a bluff. They had written nothing down, told no one. But Grace delivered it with conviction, hoping Kincaid's intelligence would make him cautious. He studied her for a long moment, then laughed. You're a terrible liar, Miss Sterling, but I admire the attempt. He stood, moving around the desk toward her. However, since you've been so honest with me, let me be honest with you. Nathan Chambers will lose that ranch, one way or another. The only question is whether you get hurt in the process. Leave now. Go back east, and I'll even pay your fare. Stay, and you'll regret it. Grace backed toward the window, her hand finding the sill. I'm not leaving, and neither is Nathan. She climbed through and dropped to the ground outside, then ran for the horse. Behind her, she heard Kincaid's voice calling out, but she was already mounting, urging the animal into a gallop. Her heart raced as she rode through the dark streets, expecting pursuit at any moment. But none came. Perhaps Kincaid was confident enough in his threats that he did not need to chase her. Or perhaps he was planning something worse. Grace made it back to the ranch just before dawn, her legs trembling as she dismounted. She led the horse into the barn, whispering apologies for running her so hard, and was brushing her down when Nathan's voice came from the doorway. "Where the hell have you been?" Grace turned to find him standing there, his hair disheveled, still in his nightshirt, and hastily pulled on pants. The relief on his face warred with anger and fear. "I went to see Kincaid," she admitted. "I needed to know the truth." "You did what?" Nathan crossed the space between them in 3 strides, gripping her shoulders. "Grace, he could have killed you. He could have hurt you in ways that make death look merciful. What were you thinking?" "I was thinking that you're being destroyed piece by piece and I couldn't just stand by." Grace's own anger flared. "I was thinking that maybe if I confronted him, I could find some leverage, some way to stop this." "And did you?" His hands were still on her shoulders, but his grip had gentled. He admitted he sent the letters. He wants your ranch because of the water source. He plans to use it to force the Cheyenne off their lands. Grace's voice shook slightly. "He offered to pay my way back east if I'd leave. Said I'd regret staying." Nathan pulled her against his chest, wrapping his arms around her tightly. Grace felt his heart hammering, felt the tremor in his hands. "Don't ever do that again," he said roughly. "I can lose the ranch, lose the cattle, lose everything. But I can't lose you. Do you understand?" Grace pressed her face against his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of him. "I understand. I'm sorry. I just wanted to help." "I know." He pulled back enough to cup her face in his hands. "But we're partners, remember? We make decisions together. No more running off into danger alone." "No more running off into danger alone," she echoed. Then, because she could not help herself, she added, "You said you can't lose me." Nathan's expression softened. "Grace, I think I'm falling in love with you. I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other. But it's the truth. And the thought of Kincaid hurting you makes me want to burn his whole world down." Grace's breath caught. She had known her own feelings were deepening. But hearing Nathan say the words aloud made them real in a way that terrified and thrilled her. "I think I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered. "And it scares me to death." "We'll be scared together." He kissed her forehead, then her cheeks, then finally her lips, soft and sweet and full of promise. "But first, we need a plan. If Kincaid wants this ranch, we need to make sure he can never have it. And we need to protect the Cheyenne's access to the water." Over breakfast, they worked out their strategy. Nathan would ride to the Cheyenne winter camp and warn them about Kincaid's plans. Offer them formal partnership in protecting the water rights. Grace would go into town and speak to the newspaper editor. Tell their story before Kincaid could spin his own version. It was risky, exposing themselves before they had solid proof. But staying silent would let Kincaid control the narrative. "Be careful in town," Nathan said as she prepared to leave. "Kincaid owns the sheriff, but there are good people there too. The newspaper editor, Samuel Wright, he's honest. Start with him." Grace nodded, checking the small pistol Nathan had insisted she carry in her bag. She had never fired a gun in her life, but Nathan had shown her the basics that morning. Point, pull back the hammer, squeeze the trigger. Simple in theory, terrifying in practice. The ride into town felt longer than it was. Grace's nerves stretched taut, as she navigated the main street, feeling eyes on her. The scandal of her arrival had surely made the rounds by now. A woman claiming to be Nathan's bride when he had sent for none. Some would find it amusing, others suspicious. Kincaid would have made sure of that. The newspaper office was a small building near the general store. Grace tied her horse and went inside, her heart hammering. A man looked up from a printing press, ink staining his fingers. He was older, maybe 60, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. "Help you, miss? Mr. Wright? I'm Grace Sterling. I work for Nathan Chambers. I have a story you need to hear." Samuel Wright listened without interrupting as Grace laid out everything. The false letters, Kincaid's admission, his plans for the Cheyenne lands. She showed him the letters she had brought, the ones that had lured her to Oklahoma territory. She explained about the poisoned cattle, the burned barn, the systematic attacks on Nathan's property. When she finished, Wright sat back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "That's quite an accusation, Miss Sterling. Victor Kincaid is a powerful man. If I print this without solid proof, he'll sue me into oblivion." "I know what I heard," Grace said firmly. "And Nathan's ranch shows the evidence of Kincaid's attacks. The dead cattle can be examined by a veterinarian. The burned barn is visible to anyone who rides out there. The letters prove fraud was committed, even if we can't prove Kincaid wrote them directly. But no witness to Kincaid's confession except you. And forgive my bluntness, but you're a woman who showed up claiming to be a bride when Nathan never sent for one. Kincaid will paint you as a scorned woman, making wild accusations." Grace felt frustration burn in her chest. "So he gets away with it because he's rich and male, and I'm neither?" "I didn't say that." Wright leaned forward. "I believe you, Miss Sterling. I've suspected Kincaid of shady dealings for years. But belief isn't proof. I need something concrete, something he can't explain away." "Then help me get it." Grace met his eyes. "Tell me what you need, and I'll find it." Wright studied her for a long moment. "You're braver than you look. All right. Kincaid keeps an office above the saloon. He conducts most of his business dealings there, keeps records. If we could get our hands on those records, prove his involvement in the attacks on Nathan's ranch, connect him to other illegal activities, that would be enough to bring in the territorial marshal. You want me to break into his office and steal his records? I'm a newspaperman. I can't suggest anything illegal." But Wright's slight smile suggested otherwise. "I'm simply saying that if certain documents were to come into my possession through anonymous means, I would have a duty to investigate their authenticity and report on any crimes they revealed." Grace understood. Wright would print the story if she gave him proof, but she would have to get that proof herself. And if she was caught, Wright could claim no knowledge of how she obtained it. "If I do this, and something happens to me, you print the story anyway. You tell people what Kincaid is doing. You have my word." Wright extended his hand. Grace shook it, feeling the weight of what she had just agreed to. She left the newspaper office with a plan forming in her mind. Breaking into Kincaid's office would be even riskier than climbing through his window had been. But this time, she would not do it alone. This time, she would do it right. Grace returned to the ranch to find Nathan waiting on the porch, his face lined with worry. Relief flooded his features when he saw her. "Thank God. I was about to ride after you." "I'm fine. I spoke to Samuel Wright at the newspaper." Grace dismounted and tied the horse. He believes us, but he needs proof. Documents from Kincaid's office linking him to the attacks. Nathan's expression darkened. Absolutely not. You're not breaking into Kincaid's office. We don't have a choice. There's always a choice, and the choice is not risking your life. Nathan descended the porch steps. I'll do it. Tonight, after the saloon closes. You stay here where it's safe. Nathan, if you get caught, Kincaid will have you hanged for burglary. The sheriff is in his pocket, remember? But if I get caught, the worst I face is scandal and maybe jail time. A woman can't hang for theft in most territories. You think I'd let you go to jail? I think we need those documents, and I'm the better choice to get them. Grace moved closer, placing her hands on his chest. I've already broken into his house once. I know how to move quietly, how to pick locks, and more importantly, if I'm seen in town at night, people will assume I'm just a foolish woman walking alone. They'd immediately suspect. Nathan caught her hands, holding them against his heart. I can't let you do this. You're not letting me do anything. We're partners, remember? This is our decision, and I say this is the best way. They argued for another hour, but Grace's logic eventually won out. Nathan hated it. She could see it in every tense line of his body. But he could not refute her points. That night, as they prepared for the break-in, he checked her pistol 3 times and made her promise to run at the first sign of danger. If anything goes wrong, you get out. Forget the documents. Forget everything. Just run. His hands framed her face. Promise me. I promise. Grace stood on her toes and kissed him, trying to pour all her feelings into it. Love, determination, hope. When they parted, she whispered, I'll be careful. And when I come back, we'll have what we need to stop Kincaid. They rode to town together, Nathan insisting on staying close even though the plan required him to wait with the horses several blocks from the saloon. Grace approached on foot, her dark cloak hiding her dress, her hair pinned tight under a bonnet. The saloon was loud, full of cowboys and gamblers. No one noticed one more woman on the street. The external stairs to Kincaid's office were around the back, barely lit by the moon. Grace climbed them carefully, testing each step before putting her weight on it. The door at the top was locked, but the lock was similar to the window catch at his house. Grace worked her hairpin, her fingers steady despite her hammering heart. The lock clicked. Grace eased the door open and slipped inside. Kincaid's office was orderly, everything in its place. Desk, filing cabinets, a safe in the corner. Grace went to the desk first, checking drawers. Papers, contracts, business correspondence. She skimmed them by the light of her small shaded lantern, looking for anything connecting Kincaid to Nathan's ranch. In the bottom drawer, she found a folder marked with Nathan's name. Inside were surveyor maps showing the water source Nathan's ranch controlled, notes about the Cheyenne tribe's seasonal movements, and several letters discussing potential buyers for the land once Kincaid acquired it. There were also receipts for payments to men Grace did not recognize, dated with the same days as the attacks on Nathan's property. This was it. The proof they needed. Grace was carefully folding the documents to hide in her cloak when she heard footsteps on the stairs outside. Her heart stopped. She doused the lantern and looked frantically for another exit. There was only the door she had come through and the window overlooking the street. The footsteps reached the landing. Grace heard voices. Kincaid's distinctive tone and another man's. She could not get out the door now. The window was her only option. Grace shoved the documents inside her cloak, fastened it tight, and moved to the window. It overlooked a narrow alley, maybe a 10-foot drop to the ground. If she landed wrong, she could break an ankle or worse. But if she stayed, Kincaid would find her. The door handle turned. Grace did not hesitate. She climbed onto the sill and jumped. She hit the ground hard, her ankle screaming in protest, but she rolled with the impact like her brother had taught her. Above, she heard Kincaid's voice raised in alarm. He had seen her, or at least seen someone leaving through his window. Grace ran despite the pain in her ankle, her cloak flying behind her. She heard shouts, the sound of boots on the stairs. Kincaid was giving chase. The street was chaos, Grace weaving between drunks and horses, her breath coming in gasps. Her ankle threatened to give out with every step, but fear drove her forward. She had to reach Nathan, had to get these documents to safety. A hand grabbed her cloak, yanking her backward. Grace screamed and spun, her hand finding the pistol in her bag. She pulled it free and pointed it at her attacker, a man she did not recognize, one of Kincaid's hired thugs. "Let go or I'll shoot," she gasped. He laughed, reaching for the gun. Grace pulled the trigger. The shot was deafening, the recoil nearly knocking the pistol from her hand. The man fell back with a cry, clutching his shoulder. Blood bloomed across his shirt. Grace stared in horror at what she had done, even though it was self-defense, even though she had no choice. Then Nathan was there, appearing from the crowd, his own gun drawn. "Grace, come on!" She ran to him, and he pulled her along the street toward where they had left the horses. Behind them, she heard Kincaid shouting orders, more men joining the pursuit. Nathan lifted her onto her horse and mounted his own in one fluid motion. They galloped out of town as shots rang out behind them. Grace clung to her horse's mane, her injured ankle throbbing, her heart racing. The documents were still secure in her cloak, but she had shot a man. She had actually shot someone. They did not stop until they were miles from town, deep in the darkness of the prairie. Nathan finally slowed, reaching across to grip Grace's arm. "Are you hurt? Did they hit you?" "No. But I shot someone, Nathan. I shot him. In self-defense. He grabbed you first." Nathan's voice was fierce. "You did what you had to do. Did you get the documents?" Grace nodded, pulling them from her cloak with shaking hands. "Everything. Proof of the payments to the men who attacked your ranch, maps showing his plans for the water rights, letters about selling the land. It's all here." Nathan took the papers, scanning them quickly by moonlight. His expression turned grim, then satisfied. "This is enough. We can take this to the territorial marshal, have Kincaid arrested for fraud, attempted murder, conspiracy. It's over, Grace. You did it." But Grace did not feel victorious. She felt sick, shaken, terrified. The enormity of what she had just done crashed over her. She had broken the law, shot a man, made herself a criminal in Kincaid's eyes. There would be consequences, charges, maybe even jail time despite what she had told Nathan earlier. "Hey!" Nathan moved his horse closer, reaching out to touch her face. "Look at me. You're safe. We're going to be fine." "I'm not fine. I just shot someone, Nathan. What if I killed him? What if Kincaid comes after us before we can reach the marshal? What if this all falls apart and we lose everything anyway?" Nathan leaned across the gap between their horses and kissed her, hard and desperate. "Then we lose together. But we're not giving up. We're taking these documents to Samuel Wright first thing in the morning, and he's going to print the truth. Then we ride to the territorial capital and give copies to the marshal. Kincaid can come after us all he wants, but the truth is going to be public before he can stop it." Grace took a shaky breath, then another. Nathan was right. They had the proof. They just had to get it into the right hands before Kincaid could silence them. They rode through the night, approaching the ranch as dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. Grace's ankle throbbed. Her whole body ached. But they were alive. They had won the first battle. But as they crested the hill overlooking the ranch, Grace's heart sank. Smoke rose from the direction of the house, black and thick. Even from a distance, she could see flames. "No," Nathan breathed, then kicked his horse into a gallop. They raced down the hill, but it was already too late. The house was engulfed, flames shooting through the roof. The barn was burning too, and Grace could hear the terrified screams of the horses trapped inside. Nathan was off his horse before it fully stopped, running toward the barn. Grace followed, ignoring her injured ankle. They got the barn doors open together, the heat nearly knocking them back. Nathan plunged inside, reappearing moments later leading two panicked horses. He thrust the reins at Grace and went back for more. The house was beyond saving, but they could rescue the animals. Grace led the horses away from the flames, tying them to the fence, then limped back to help Nathan with the others. The chickens scattered in chaos, but they were free, alive. When the last animal was safe, Nathan stood in his yard and watched his home burn. Everything he owned, all his possessions, his wife's things he had kept, the furniture his father had built, all of it reduced to ash and ember. Grace moved to his side, taking his hand. She had no words that could make this better. Kincaid had struck while they were in town, had burned Nathan's world down in retaliation for Grace stealing his documents. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "This is my fault." "No." Nathan's voice was hard as stone. "This is Kincaid's fault, and he's going to pay for every bit of it." They stood together as the sun rose fully, painting the destruction in harsh light. The house collapsed inward with a crash of timber and a shower of sparks. Everything Nathan had built, everything he had loved, gone. But he was still standing. They both were. "We need to get out of here," Grace said finally. "Kincaid might send men to finish what the fire started. And you need medical attention for those burns." Nathan looked down at his hands, raw and blistered from dragging the horses out. He had not seemed to notice them until Grace pointed them out. "We need to get to town, to Samuel Wright. These documents have to be made public before Kincaid can do anything else." They rode back toward town, exhausted and hurting but grimly determined. The sun was fully up now, the prairie beautiful in the morning light, indifferent to human suffering. Grace felt the documents still tucked in her cloak, the papers that had cost Nathan his home. They had to be worth it. They had to mean something. Samuel Wright's office was just opening when they arrived. The editor took one look at them, smoke-stained and injured, and ushered them inside without a word. Grace laid the documents on his desk while Nathan collapsed into a chair. "Kincaid burned my ranch," Nathan said flatly. "Last night, while we were getting these." Wright examined the papers, his expression growing darker with each page. "This is it. This is everything I need. Payments to known criminals, plans to defraud the Cheyenne, correspondence about selling stolen land. He's finished." "Can you print it today?" Grace asked. "Before he knows we're still alive? Before he can threaten you, or bribe you, or burn your office too? I'll have it on the street by noon." Wright was already moving to his printing press. "You two need to get somewhere safe. Kincaid won't take this lying down." "We'll go to the marshal," Nathan said. "Show him copies of everything. Get an official investigation started. By the time we get back, the whole territory will know what Kincaid has done." They left Wright setting type, his gnarled fingers moving with practiced speed. Grace and Nathan stopped at the doctor's office long enough for Nathan's burns to be treated and Grace's ankle to be wrapped. The doctor asked no questions, just worked efficiently, and sent them on their way with supplies. The ride to the territorial capital took 2 days. They slept under the stars, huddled together for warmth. The horses picketed nearby. Grace's ankle improved with rest, and Nathan's hands began to heal. But the loss of the ranch hung heavy between them. "I'm sorry," Grace said on the second night, staring up at the vast expanse of stars. "You lost everything because of me." "I lost a house and a barn," Nathan corrected. "I still have the land, the cattle that survived, the horses. And I have you." He rolled onto his side to look at her. "The house can be rebuilt, Grace. But if I'd lost you trying to protect it, I'd never forgive myself. What will you do? After this is over? Rebuild. Start again." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "With you, if you'll stay. Not as an employee, not as someone who answered a false letter. Stay as my partner, my equal, my future wife. If you'll have me." Grace's breath caught. "Nathan, are you asking me to marry you? I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a couple of weeks. But I also know that you're the bravest woman I've ever met. That you make me laugh even when everything is falling apart. That I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life." He took her hand. "So yes, Grace Sterling, I'm asking you to marry me. Will you?" She should say no. It was too soon, too fast, too much. But her heart knew the truth. She loved this man, loved his strength and his kindness, and the way he treated her like an equal. She wanted to build a life with him, to face whatever came next together. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Nathan kissed her under the stars, and Grace felt joy bloom in her chest, despite everything they had lost. They had each other. That was enough. The territorial marshal was a weathered man named Douglas Hayes, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He listened to their story, examined the documents, and his expression grew grimmer with each revelation. "Victor Kincaid," he said heavily. "I've suspected him of illegal dealings for years, but he's careful. Never leaves evidence. You two just handed me enough to put him away for decades. Will you arrest him?" Nathan asked. "Already sent deputies to bring him in. He'll be in custody by tonight. Hayes looked at Grace with something like respect. You're either the bravest or most foolish woman I've ever met, Miss Sterling. Breaking into a dangerous man's office, stealing documents, shooting one of his men in self-defense. You could face charges yourself. I know. Grace lifted her chin. I did what I had to do. So did I once. Hayes smiled faintly. Which is why I'm ruling all your actions as justified in service of exposing criminal conspiracy. No charges will be filed against you. You're free to go. Relief flooded through Grace so powerfully her knees weakened. Nathan caught her arm, steadying her. They thanked Hayes and left the marshal's office, stepping out into the afternoon sunshine of the territorial capital. It's over, Grace said, hardly believing it. He's really going to be arrested. It's over. Nathan pulled her close, right there on the main street, and kissed her thoroughly. Grace did not care who saw, who judged. Let them talk. She had faced down worse than gossip. They stayed in the capital long enough to give official statements and ensure Kincaid was securely in custody. The newspaper stories had spread quickly. Samuel Wright's expose picked up by papers across the territory. Kincaid's business empire was crumbling, his associates fleeing like rats from a sinking ship. The Cheyenne tribe sent a delegation to thank Nathan for protecting their water access, and the tribal leader invited them both to attend the summer trading gathering. When they finally returned to the ranch a week later, Grace's heart ached at the sight of the burned ruins. But Nathan surveyed the damage with determination, rather than despair. We'll start with a new barn, he said. Then a house, bigger than the old one, strong enough to last generations. We'll need help. Grace squeezed his hand. But the town owes you now. I think they'll come. She was right. When word spread that Nathan and Grace were rebuilding, neighbors appeared with lumber and tools. The community that had whispered about Grace's scandalous arrival now saw her as the woman who had brought down Victor Kincaid, who had saved Nathan's ranch and protected the Cheyenne's rights. Samuel Wright wrote a follow-up story celebrating their courage. And suddenly, Grace was no longer the woman from a scandal in Boston. She was a frontier hero. The barn went up in 3 days, a community effort that reminded Grace what the West could be at its best. People helping people, building something together that would last. On the evening of the barn's completion, Nathan and Grace stood together, watching the sunset paint the prairie in shades of orange and gold. The barn stood solid behind them, the foundation for the new house already laid. There was still so much work ahead, but they had time. They had each other. I've been thinking, Nathan said, about the wedding. What about it? Grace leaned against him, comfortable in a way she had never imagined possible just weeks ago. We could have a big ceremony in town, invite everyone. Or we could do it quietly. Just us and Samuel Wright as witness. What would you want? Grace thought about it. A few weeks ago, the idea of a public ceremony would have terrified her. All those eyes judging, all those whispers. But she was not that frightened woman anymore. She had faced down Kincaid, had shot a man to protect herself, had helped bring justice to the territory. She was not afraid of what people thought. Big ceremony, she decided. I want the whole town to see us promise ourselves to each other. I want them to know that what we have is real, that it's worth celebrating. Nathan smiled, that rare full smile that transformed his serious face. Then that's what we'll do. Though I should warn you, I don't know how to dance. Neither do I. Grace laughed. "We'll figure it out together." And they did. The wedding was held 3 weeks later, in the newly rebuilt barn decorated with fall flowers and ribbons. The whole town turned out, along with members of the Cheyenne tribe who brought gifts and blessings. Samuel Wright gave Grace away, standing in for the family she no longer had. The ceremony was simple, the vows traditional, but when Nathan slipped a simple gold band on Grace's finger, she felt the weight of it like a promise of home. The celebration lasted into the evening. Music and dancing and more food than they could possibly eat. Grace watched Nathan attempt to dance, his awkward movements making her laugh with pure joy. This was her life now. This man, this community, this wild, beautiful territory. It was nothing like she had imagined when she answered those false letters. And yet, it was everything she had ever wanted. As the party wound down and guests began to depart, Nathan pulled Grace aside. "Ready to see the house? I thought construction didn't start until next week. Come see." He led her around the barn to where the house foundation lay. But it was no longer just a foundation. Somehow, while she had been busy with wedding preparations, Nathan and the neighbors had framed the entire structure. It stood skeletal but promising against the night sky, larger than the old house, with space for a real kitchen and multiple bedrooms. "For our children," Nathan said softly, his arm around her waist. "However many we're blessed with. And for the family we'll build together." Grace turned in his arms, reaching up to cup his face. "I love you, Nathan Chambers. Thank you for being exactly who you are." "I love you, Grace Chambers." He tested her new name, smiling. "Thank you for answering those letters, even if they were lies. They brought you to me, and I'll be grateful for that until the day I die." They kissed under the stars, the skeleton of their future home rising behind them, the prairie stretching vast and open in every direction. Grace thought about the journey that had brought her here, the scandal in Boston, the desperate hope when she read those letters, the confusion and hurt when Nathan said he had not sent them, the terror of facing Kincaid, the grief of watching Nathan's home burn. All of it had led to this moment. To love earned through hardship, to partnership forged in crisis, to a future they would build together with their own hands. "Come on," Nathan said, taking her hand. "Let's go home." Home was the small cabin Nathan had built temporarily while the house was being framed, cozy with a wood stove and the few belongings they had salvaged or been given. But it felt like a palace to Grace. It was theirs, built on truth and trust rather than lies. Nathan carried her across the threshold, both of them laughing at the tradition, and set her down gently. He lit the lantern, casting warm light across the simple room. Grace saw their future in that small space. Mornings making coffee together, evenings planning the ranch, nights wrapped in each other's arms. "I never thought I'd have this," she whispered. "After Boston, after everything, I thought I'd lost my chance at happiness." "You didn't lose anything." Nathan pulled her close, his hands gentle on her waist. "You just hadn't found it yet." He kissed her softly, then deeper, and Grace felt warmth flood through her. This was her husband, her partner, her love, the man who had given her a home when she had nothing, who had treated her with respect when the world showed her none, who had fallen in love with her strength rather than trying to break it. She kissed him back with everything she had, pouring all her love and hope and gratitude into it. When they finally parted, both breathless, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "Welcome home, Grace Chambers." "Home," she echoed, and the word had never sounded sweeter. The lantern burned low as they held each other. Two people who had found love in the most unexpected way. Outside, the Oklahoma prairie stretched under a blanket of stars, wild and beautiful and full of promise. Tomorrow they would start building their house, their future, their life together. But tonight was just for them. Grace thought about the woman she had been when she stepped off that stagecoach weeks ago. Frightened, desperate, running from her past. She barely recognized that woman now. In Nathan's arms, she had found not just love, but herself. The strength she had always possessed, but never trusted. The courage to fight for what mattered. The wisdom to know that real love was built on honesty, respect, and partnership. "Thank you," she murmured against his chest. "For what?" "For not sending those letters. If you had, if this had all gone according to plan, we would have married as strangers. We never would have fought together, never would have built this trust. Those lies brought me here, but the truth is what made me stay." Nathan's arms tightened around her. "Then I'm grateful for every lie that led to this truth." They stood together in their small cabin, the fire crackling softly, the night peaceful around them. Victor Kincaid was in custody, facing justice for his crimes. The ranch was being rebuilt, stronger than before. The community had embraced them. The Cheyenne tribe had offered friendship and alliance, and most importantly, they had each other. Grace looked up at Nathan, seeing her whole future in his blue eyes. "I love you. I love you too. Always." Outside, the wind whispered across the prairie, carrying the promise of tomorrow. But inside, Grace and Nathan held each other close. Two hearts that had found their home at last.